Hello everyone, it is Bridget here from Bridget's Healthy Kitchen, wishing you a very wonderful day wherever you are in the world and whatever it is you may be doing. It is good to have you joining us on today's episode of Quarantine Kitchen, where I am going to be doing a bit of a masterclass on how to meal prep for your freezer. So I have to be completely honest with you guys. Prior to about 2 years ago, I never thought of meal prepping for a couple of days. You know, I was very much a chef who just kind of cooked what I felt like cooking, and you know, and I was organized only to a certain point when it came to cooking at home. But now that I've been hanging out with you guys for a couple of years, I realize the importance of meal prepping for so many people. You like to be organized. You like to have your week already sorted, already, you know, in the fridge or in the freezer, so you know exactly where you're going. And we've always said this, right? Preparation is key, especially if your journey is about weight loss and it's about improving your health. Preparation is key. So this class is very much about preparation, but it's a simplified version of preparation, because I mean, when I first started, you know, creating recipes, and the thought of meal prepping, you know, just a random group of recipes can be quite daunting, especially if you're doing it for a whole week, and especially if you've got a lot of family that you're cooking for as well. So this class completely changes everything. Now, I want to say hello to everyone who's joining me. I'm seeing all your messages coming through. Lovely to have you all joining me today. Like I said, this is a cool class. This is actually, I'm hoping you take away some really cool things in this class, because I think, like, when I think about if I was to have to meal prep often or every week, because I did have a pretty awesome goal with my health, I had a pretty awesome goal, you know, with my weight loss as well, then this is how I would meal prep. And for those of you who've been following my recipes for some time, a lot of this should just be going, you know, light bulb moment. You go, yeah, that makes sense. So I'm hoping it makes sense to you guys, because it 100% makes sense to me. So thank you to everyone who's joining us. Let us know where you're coming from. Let us know where you are in the world today. I'd love to know what you're doing and that you're well. Before I get into the class, I will just say it has been a frantic day today. Here in Bridget's Healthy Kitchen, it has been absolutely frantic. We've been going non-stop all day, which has been exciting. It just feels like a little bit of normality is beginning to come back into our lives, which is really cool. And I don't mind being busy, you know, not all the time, but sometimes I don't mind being busy. Today was busy. I've literally flown out of one work environment into this one with you guys, and I'm really happy to be here, because now I can kind of relax a little bit, and we can cook some food and we can talk some story. So, you know, by all means, if you've got any questions, let us know. Mahay is here moderating for us, so he can answer all your questions as well. So the first thing we want to talk about is this whole idea of this meal prepping, which I've talked about why it's important, especially if you want to do things in advance, especially if you like to be organized, or for people who may be, and I did sort of allude to this a little bit in the build up to today's class, you may be cooking compromised. So in other words, cooking may not be your favorite thing to do in the world, which means you like to be organized. This class is ideal for all those people, including myself, who still wants to eat delicious food, but I don't want it to take too long. So this is what this is all about. So the idea of meal prepping is usually like, oh, we're going to prep complete meals, and then we're going to freeze them down in portions, as you know, like in a container, plastic container, and we're going to pop them in the freezer. And that's how we're going to meal prep. Well, I'm going to totally blow that on its head today. And I reckon that this is such a much nicer way of doing it. And all you're going to need, once you've meal prepped, you only do this, you know, a couple hours, once a week. Once you've meal prepped, these meals then stay in the freezer or in the fridge for a bit of time, but in the freezer if you want a bit more longevity. And then it's going to take you 10 minutes. You're not just heating something up in the microwave, you are cooking food. So you still get freshness in terms of it's freshly cooked for you, which is very, very exciting. So let's get going. Come on down to my bench. Let's get cooking. I've got some really cool things to show you guys today. And I'm going to do quite a few different meals, so you can kind of see where my head's at and where I'm heading with this. So come on down to my bench. So it's empty at the moment. It is completely empty. The reason it's completely empty, because look what I've got. Oh, I hope I don't drop it. Oh, look at this. Look what I've got. I've got all these goodies. this is the goodies that we are going to be meal prepping today. The first thing you're going to notice is there is a great array of vegetables, which there always is when it comes to my food, right? There's always a great array of vegetables. And it's these vegetables that I have in front of me which are going to freeze really, really well. You know, it's not so much that they freeze well, it's more important that they defrost really well. So this is what we're looking at here. So I'll just quickly go through it. Obviously that's some sweet potato. Depending on where you are, if you're low carb, you're going to avoid this. If you're eating for maintenance and wellness, please incorporate that. But if you're a real low carb diet, you might want to not have the sweet potato in there. I also have some zucchini, as you can see, a little bit of red capsicum. Capsicum does freeze really well. We've got a little bit of eggplant. Now, by the way, capsicum, eggplant, zucchini are all in season right now. So what I'm also doing is I'm taking into account foods that are in season, so we're getting them a little bit cheaper at the supermarket, and the foods that aren't in season I'll talk about just in a second. So eggplant in season, capsicum in season, zucchini absolutely 100% in season, and the other fresh vegetable that I have here that's in season is green beans. Now green beans, I'm talking about the long green bean that is in season as well, really super cheap. And if I'm talking about season, Australia, New Zealand, as we're going from summer into autumn, Australia, New Zealand, completely in season. And one thing that seems to never go out of season now, that we're also going to put in there, is a little bit of fennel. Now, if you're not a fan of fennel, trust me. Just trust me on this. You know, a whole fennel bulb you're buying, you know, for a couple of dollars, which is really good and really reasonably priced. And it can go into so many different things, not just salads, but also into what we're going to be doing here today. So I've got these kind of fresh vegetables. I've also got some mushrooms here, which are also really well priced at the moment. So I've got these fresh vegetables. But because, oh, sorry, cabbage, purple and green cabbage, as you can see there. But the vegetables that are no longer in season, I have been able to source via the freezer. One of those vegetables that I have here is a frozen piece of cauliflower, would you believe? That's frozen cauliflower, fantastic. That's one of them. The other one, which I haven't got to show you, is actually frozen broccoli. Mahi, would you be able to grab that big bag of broccoli from our back freezer? I forgot to grab it. Mahi's just going to run off and do that right now. So I'm going to show you guys what frozen broccoli. You can buy a big bag of frozen broccoli. And the other thing I have here is actually frozen spinach, which usually comes in these kind of cubes like that, and there's nothing wrong with this. So if you're finding that the vegetables, some of the vegetables that you normally purchase are starting to go, I suppose, out of season, or I told you it's a big bag. You ready? Look at this. It's a big bag of broccoli. Look, it's almost as big as me. It's a big bag of frozen broccoli. Costco, by the way. But if you're finding that, you know, some of the vegetables that you would normally use are no longer in season, and like cauliflower and broccoli is really expensive here in Australia right now. Comes in all these really cool, look at that! There's 4 of those bags in here. Isn't that cool? Got that at Costco. Very, very cool. I'm going to put that, yeah, put that there for now. You can still buy frozen vegetables and you can be okay with it. And that's the thing, you know, some vegetables are absolutely fine frozen, and broccoli, cauliflower, spinach are some of those vegetables. And so if you can't, we won't use that one, we'll leave that one can stay over there, we won't use that one. If you are struggling, then please take a look in your freezer section. You never know what you may be able to find. Now, so what you may notice that is missing here, frozen wise, is I don't have any corn. I don't cook or eat a lot of sweet corn, only because it's extremely high carb, and I do find that a lot of corn these days is genetically modified, and corn is one of the largest, one of the biggest crops that is grown throughout the world. And because it's one of the largest crops and it goes into so many different foods, it tends to be not the greatest thing for us, corn. So I do avoid sweet corn, high carb, high sugar, and if you're talking about a vegetable, I avoid that. I also avoid green peas, even though I love green peas and I grew up on green peas, but once again, they're a high carb vegetable. And what we have here is just as good, if not better. Yeah, just as good, if not better. We're going to do some fresh stuff, and we're going to do some frozen stuff as well. So those are my vegetables. I'll show you how we put everything together. But as well as that, I have a selection of proteins. Now, if you're a vegetarian, this is what you're doing. Everything in here, right? You're just doing the vegetarian style. But let's just say you want to add a bit of protein. Some of the proteins that freeze really well, one of them is, and it's still frozen, is prawns. Freeze incredibly well. Not even a problem on defrosting because they don't take long to defrost. So that's one of the proteins that you could use. Another protein that you could use is either very thinly raw sliced chicken. Works really, really well in this type of meal prepping that we're going to do. And the other thing that I find that works really well is cooked chicken. I've just got some roast chicken that I've shredded there, and I've also got a bit of tofu. So it's up to you the protein that you use. But in rule of thumb here, when we're preparing these meals, is 100 grams of protein per person, which is about 3.5 ounces. Whatever protein you decide. Tofu, cooked chicken, raw chicken, prawns work really well as well, don't forget. You decide what protein you want to put in, and rule of thumb is you're going to be adding about 100 grams of protein per person into these freezer packs or freezer meals, and 300 to 400 grams of vegetables. So that's kind of the rule of thumb. And it doesn't matter how you put these together, which I'm going to show you soon. It's up to you how you put it together. But if you're always working off about 100 grams of protein, 3.5 ounces, and about 300 to 400 grams per person of vegetables, you're going to make an amazing meal regardless of what it is that you put into it. Yeah, regardless. So let me show you how this all comes together. Come over here, lovely basket. This is where it kind of gets a little bit exciting. I'll come back up here. So what we're creating, I'm coming in close. What we're creating today is we're creating what I'm calling freezer packs. Now this is the very first time I've ever talked about freezer packs before, because normally we talk about meal prepping. What we're doing here is we're creating freezer packs using the vegetables, 300 to 400 grams, and using the protein, 100 grams. We're going to combine all those things together, and we're going to create literally a pack of food that sits in our freezer, and when it's time to cook it, we take it out of the freezer, and then we either turn it into soup, we turn it into a stir fry, we create a dish from these freezer packs. It couldn't be simpler, because you decide on the vegetables and you decide on the protein, provided you use those numbers. 100 grams of protein, 300 to 400 grams of your vegetables. You can do anything you want here. So the very first freezer pack that I'm going to create today is actually a soup. Would you believe? You can create a soup in a freezer pack, and it's going to take you 10 minutes to cook the soup once you take it out of the freezer, which is kind of ridiculous. So the very first pack we're going to be doing today is actually a soup, would you believe? And it's going to be ready for you in the freezer. So come back down onto my bench, and I'm going to show you guys how I'm going to prepare this soup. So the soup we're going to make today to go into our freezer pack is actually going to be this is one of my recipes, which is zucchini and spinach soup. Someone on our page made that soup today or yesterday. They made my spinach and zucchini soup. They absolutely loved it. Now imagine that you are doing all the prep for your zucchini soup, and you're leaving it in the freezer. So when it's time for you to make soup, all you do is take it out of the freezer, put it into a pot like that, add your liquid, and you're ready to go. It's as simple as that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to slice up the vegetables that are going to go into our freezer pack. And because it's zucchini and spinach, that's basically what I have there. So when it comes to slicing up your vegetables, the most important thing when it comes to these freezer packs is that you do it and they're all consistently cut. So if you're doing one size, you have to do that one size throughout. Otherwise the vegetables will cook at different times, and some of them will be a little bit more overcooked, or some of them will be undercooked, which is what you want to avoid. So the key to this, no matter what you're doing when it comes to our freezer packs, is you are cutting your vegetables consistently. So because it's zucchini or courgette, as you guys all know, they don't take very long to cook. So I'm just going to be slicing my zucchini all at the same size. Same size. Sorry, Mahoney, I forgot one more thing. Would you be able to grab me an onion, please? Like I said, we've been a busy day. I forgot half of my vegetables. I'm just going to throw them just directly into here so you guys can kind of see what's going on. Remember that spinach I was talking about, which I bought frozen already? That's going to go in there as well. This is literally soup for 2 people. Now I'm just going to take an onion. Thank you very much. Red or white, doesn't matter. Follow the recipe. But what you'll find when you follow the recipe is that all the vegetables for your soup can quite happily go into your freezer pack. So, like, literally, dinner is never very far away, because sometimes the hardest or the longest task is actually the preparation of the vegetables. But if you're doing this well ahead of time, and you're cutting everything nice and consistently, so they're going to cook really, really evenly, you have just cut down making soup from scratch. You're not reheating it in a microwave, you're literally making it from scratch. You have cut down that process so incredibly much, so incredibly quickly, because you've done the hard work, and this is the hard work that we're doing tonight. So when it comes to our onion, once again, consistent slices. Onion does, would you believe, freeze really well. So consistent slices of our onion go in there, and literally, guess what? That is pretty much our, hard to believe, I know, right? That's it. That's meal prep done for a soup for 2 people. Well, 1.5, depending on how hungry you are. So all we would do now is we would go over to whatever pack you decide to pack your vegetables into. I'm going with this wonderful craft bag. I have a few spare, so I'm going to put mine into this craft bag. You could put yours into one of these. You could also put yours into a plastic container, you know, one of these types of things. It's up to you how you store it. I quite like the idea of putting, because it kind of looks cool and funky, I'm going to put this portion into my bag, and I have meal prep now, 1 meal done. How long did that take? A couple of minutes. And if you're making, you know, quite a few of these, rather than just doing 1 or 2 portions at a time, maybe you're doing 5 to 7 portions at a time. And the reason why I like the bags is I find that you get more room in the freezer when you pack it in something like this. So you pack your meal prep in there. How cool is that? And then it's just a matter of sealing your bag, seal your bag up, and then of course do not forget the most important thing is to write on it what it is and put the date on it as well. Once this is frozen, these vegetables will last in your freezer for 3 to 4 months. So, but make sure you put a date, just in case, you know, it ends up in the back of your freezer and you're like, what is that and when did I make that? So make sure you put a date. So what are we calling this? This is, what I said was zucchini and spinach soup. And the date today is, I believe, the 22nd of April. Thank you, Mahi. 2020. So now you have, look at that! That is the cutest thing you've ever seen. Oh, I know it's backwards. It reads properly my way. But now you've got your pack all ready to go. And when you are ready to cook your soup, all you need to do, yeah, take your, you've been at work all day. Let's go through a scenario. You're at work, you're tired, you come home, or you've been at work at home all day and you're tired because you're in quarantine and you can't leave the house. So you're working from home or where it is, or just you just had a long day. You take your freezer pack out of the freezer. You don't have to defrost it. Take it out of the freezer, just like this, just like this. Go over to your pot, just there. And then your freezer pack goes into your pot and you allow it to steam and come together. You add a little bit of, sorry Mahi, I'll come to you in a second. You'll add a little bit of your garlic, your ginger goes in there. You let it start to stir fry a little bit, and then you add kombu water. You allow it to come to the boil, you turn it off and you blend it, and you have the most delicious soup. Of course you add salt and pepper and you taste it. But it's literally going to take you 10 minutes to cook a brand new soup. Just like that. Okay, someone's asking me where I get these bags from. It's a really good question. I buy them in packs of about 1,000 because this is actually leftover from Inulin. So I don't know if you can buy them in smaller quantities, but you don't have to have these, even though these are the cutest things in the entire world and they freeze really well. don't forget that you can use, if you go to like, I don't even know if the $2 shops are open anymore. I don't know. But in case they are, or you want to go to a shop that sells like this type of stuff, if not, seriously.
And you can see what's inside.
Do this. And as Mahei was saying, you can see what's inside. It has that wonderful little area where you can write on it as well. Look, I'll do the next pack in that. Just in case you have bag envy, I get it. These are cool bags and they're pouches, so they actually sit on the bench really well. And I totally get that. And my freezer's gonna be completely full of these. And don't worry, it's just a bag. Doesn't matter what it's stored in. It can be stored in this little baggie that we can all get from the supermarket. But if you do have the chance to get something like this, or just something like this, it is absolutely fine. Doesn't matter as long as you've got your packs ready to go. So we've now prepped soup. It hasn't taken us very long at all. You guys always have, and this is why this type of cooking is perfect, is you have prepped, you've done all the hard work, which is the vegetables. Done. See you later. Go in the freezer. You always have your ginger. You always have your garlic prepped. I know you guys do, because I do. This is always in my fridge, my ginger and my garlic. And because I always am prepared, what's the other liquid I always have? What's the other liquid I always have I always have my combo stock. So I'm ready to go. Dinner is 10 minutes away, and it's not that you're reheating food. You are literally cooking it from scratch, but all the hard work's been done for you. So that's our soup. Fantastic. Keep in mind these things. Keep in mind the combo. This is what's going to make your life incredibly, incredibly easy, is when you already have your garlic and your ginger, because this is going to add awesome flavor. If you're standing there and you're having to peel garlic and you're like, I can't be bothered with the garlic, I won't put it in, your food's not going to taste quite as nice, and it's not going to be quite as good for you. So if these are already ready to go, take that out of the freezer, add that, throw it in a pot, add some combo, you have dinner that you made from scratch. Very cool. All right, that's the first one we're doing. I'm going to put it there, just I'm lined up, ready to go, and you guys can see. Very good. Okay, the next one we're going to do is once again, this is when you can really start to think outside the square a little bit and start to work with vegetables that are in season wherever you are for a start, or vegetables that you can get hold of. If not, don't forget there's always the frozen ones as well. So the next one we're going to do is a stir fry. You can slice all the vegetables ready to go into a stir fry that you cook in, once again, 10 minutes, and you put it into your freezer packs. So when it comes to a stir fry, decide whatever you want to go into it. I'm just looking at my lovely array of vegetables here, and I think this stir fry we're going to do we're going to do a green one. This can be our vegetarian stir fry. So the first thing I'm going to do here is, because my beans are fresh but they're raw, and they don't require a lot of cooking, but I am actually going to pre-blanch them. Only because it means when they do go and become stir-fried, they're going to be even quicker to cook. So I've got my pot of water on here. Remember, we're doing a green vegetarian style stir-fry. I've got my pot of water on here. I'm going to bring it to the boil. Come closer. Come closer. I'm going to teach you guys a few tricks. You guys come closer too. I'm bringing this closer. You guys come closer to the screen, because I'm going to teach you guys a really cool trick on how to make sure that when you are pre-blanching your vegetables, if you're using raw vegetables, you are pre-blanching, you make sure that you're locking in all the goodness, and you're also locking in the color. So I'm bringing my water to the boil. I'm going to add, even though I'm just pre-blanching, I'm still going to salt my water. I still want to add a little bit of salt to my water, just a little bit. And the other thing I'm going to do, for anyone who's been following me regularly, you know what I'm going to do now. I'm going to take a little bit of baking soda, just a little bit. And we're going to drop, say, half a teaspoon of baking soda. It's going to go into our water. The reason we are doing that is because the baking soda is going to help to lock in the color of the vegetables. They're not going to go brown and manky. They're going to stay vibrant and green, even though we've blanched them and even though we've frozen them, which is really important when you're cooking from frozen, is that your vegetables still look lovely and fresh and juicy. So the thing you may notice here about my beans is and I could be doing this with asparagus, I could be doing this with fresh broccoli, whatever the green is notice something here. And what you're going to notice is that they are all cut to the same length. So they're bite-sized for a start. You could pick that up with your fork or your chopsticks or whatever and quite easily eat that. They're all at the same length. It's easy with beans because they all are kind of the same width. But I've also cut them, oh, gotta see if you see that? I've also cut them the same size as well, that way and that way. It's all about that consistency. You know, take that little, like 30 seconds more, that minute more to actually go through and make sure your vegetables are all cut the same size. It's going to make your eating so much more pleasurable. So my water's almost come to the boil. Come on, water. I'm speeding it along. Sometimes if you talk to it, it does move faster. No, it doesn't actually. A watch pot never boils, isn't that correct? A watch pot never boils. So I'm just going to be blanching this. Now the term blanch is French. Come up here. The term, this is really important. No, it's not, but it's really interesting. The term blanche, spelled B-L-A-N-C-H-E, there is an E on the end, blanche, is French term. And it's one of the things that we learn as chefs. We always learn how the French terminology in kitchens. In fact, there's every chance that I could walk into a French kitchen, French run and owned kitchen. Okay, I could walk into a kitchen in Paris, or I could walk into a kitchen in Marseille, and I will be able to understand, without having, you know, a great understanding of French, I can understand what the chefs are talking about because we use French terminology. And blanche, or blanche, is a French term, and it means to plunge very quickly into boiling water. So if you ever hear me say blanch, what I'm not talking about Blanche from the Golden Girls, even though I still like the Golden Girls reruns, they're very good. It's not Blanche from the Golden Girls. This is blanching of our vegetables. This is how you're going to remember it though. Blanching Golden Girls means plunging into water very quickly for that 1 minute. And in fact, because we are freezing our vegetables, I'm probably only going to do it for 30 seconds. Not long at all. I'm almost going to like half cook the vegetables today. Half cook them because they're going to be frozen. That's fine. So water boiling. Remember Blanche, Golden Girls, water needs to be boiling. And we're going to do that very, very briefly. So over to my pot. I've got my steam coming off. I've got my salt in there. I've got my baking soda in there. So we lock in that color. And we're going to blanch our green beans or our asparagus or our, or our broccoli or our broccolini or whatever is a green vegetable that you've got. We're going to do that very, very quickly. One of the things that used to really freak me out when I was a kid is that I would go to certain grandma's houses. I need to be probably a bit more precise with that. Certain older, like my grandma was a great cook, but I had a couple of older aunties who were very traditional cooks, and green beans were never green. They ended up being kind of brown. At some point in their life, they stopped being green. Give me a second. I need to. And that is because they were overcooked. You don't need to spend, when it comes to anything green, they don't need much time. Look at that, 30 seconds done. All right, taking them out. Best way to take them out is using one of these little, these handheld sieves or colanders or wire mesh strainers. Those come out. Now we're going to go over to the sink. And we're going to allow that to cool completely by running cold water over the beans until they're completely cold. This is, you've just learned something French, this is to blanch. So we just blanched our green beans. So you can blanch your fresh vegetables, like your green beans, but you wouldn't blanch something like this, because this doesn't need long at all. In fact, if you can eat it raw, you may not even need to blanch it at all. Cabbage we can eat raw, we can eat zucchini raw, don't need to blanch them at all. But certain vegetables, like say if you're adding carrots or you're adding green beans or broccoli or asparagus, there's nothing stopping you from doing that 30-second blanch just to get them to a place where they're going to be so quick to cook. So I'm going to take this off now. Happy with that. I'm going to grab my green beans so we can see what's happening. Oh, it's beeping. Alright, so green beans are here. Look at that colour. Ah, gorgeous, isn't it? Isn't it gorgeous? All right, so green beans are done. They are now going to go into my bowl because they become part of the collection of vegetables that we're doing. Remember, I'm not giving you guys exact recipes here. I've given you quantities. 300 to 400 grams of vegetables per person to 100 grams of protein. That's all you've got to think about here. How simple is it, right? So simple. Right, so that's done. We're doing green. So the next thing green we're going to do, might as well, why not? Let's just add a zucchini because zucchinis are awesome and they're in season. Hence why I did the soup. And they freeze really well and they defrost really well. So when it comes to our zucchini, I mean, you could just literally do a freezer pack that has beans and zucchini. They're both in season. You could use that in a stir fry later on, but you could also add a few more if you want to. Remember, the key thing here is we're doing consistent cuts, not big chunks, but little slices of the zucchini is going to go in there. Wonderful. If, just say I did this and I tried to stir fry that, good luck, right? That's not going to work. But these lovely little even slices going to stir fry really nicely. And that's what we're creating here. We're creating a vegetarian stir fry, a green vegetarian stir fry, which means it's an alkaline or anti-inflammatory stir fry as well. So we've got our green beans in there, give it a bit of a toss, make sure the vegetables are mixed through. Let's add a few more. Remember my broccoli? Remember my frozen broccoli? Bit big, bit chunky. So I'm actually going to cut them down, and they're still frozen, that's fine. They're going to go back into our freezer pack. Bit of broccoli goes in there. These are have been blanched as well. Well, they probably don't blanch, they probably do snap freeze them after they've cooked them. So these are already at a good place. Look at that, that's looking good already.
What's a snap freeze?
What's a snap freeze? Good question. A snap freeze is when you put something into a snap freezer, and you know, normally when if you were to freeze this may take 6 to 7 hours to completely freeze. A snap freezer does it in about 40 seconds. So it's on a commercial value. It means that they lock in all the goodness and they do it very, very fast. So snap freezing is actually a really cool sort of technique that commercial commercial manufacturers use more so than restaurants. So I'm going to add a bit of fennel. I know it's not green, but I've got a bit of a green tip there. That's why I kind of found it. And this is the whole thing. You decide what you want to add. Fennel's delicious. It's gorgeous. It freezes so well. It stir fries so well. So we're going to add a bit of fennel. Oh my god, the smell coming off this now is nuts. It's absolutely nuts. So good. Alright, so that's there. And something else green I have. A little bit of green capsicum. Capsicum freezes really, really well. It is one of those things that literally is just a bit of a gem. Now, how do you prep capsicum? I was always taught as a chef is that you slice it, you remove the seeds from it. And then we're also taught to remove this white membrane here. I never quite understood why, because it's actually quite edible, that little bit there, but I think it was more for the looks. You don't have to do that. All you have to do is remove the seeds. I'm actually going to add that membrane because I think it's completely edible. And we're going to add a little bit of capsicum. How am I going to cut it? Here we go. Remember, consistent cuts. This doesn't need long to cook, so there's no need to blanch it. And that's kind of your rule of thumb. Think about how long it would take you to cook a carrot, a slice of carrot. This will take you less than a minute. The carrot might take 5 to 7 minutes to cook, even if it's that small. Then we'll pre-blanch that. So we've got some lovely capsicum in there. We have that one. Oh my god, look, doesn't that just look like a bowl of goodness? And this is something that you created just by what's in season, what you have maybe in the freezer, and you've created this amazing idea of a meal pack, just like this. So remember, it's vegetarian. So what I'm going to do with the vegetarian one is, you could just stop here, just do that, and freeze that in portions. I'm actually going to add tofu. Now I'm using a very firm tofu here, so I'm adding a bit of protein. I'm using a very firm tofu, and I'm just going to cut it into quite large pieces, like that. They're pretty large there. They can go in as well. Just remember, we're just adding enough, 100 grams per person, depending on how many portions you're making. And then we now have this absolutely gorgeous, stunning, ready to be bagged meal prep. And it's only taken me as long as it's taken me to cut stuff. So I'm going to put it in here now, just so you guys don't have bag envy. So we're going to put it in this one. But I do love those brown bags. They're pretty cool. They're pretty cool. Okay, so you might, if you wanted to get absolutely perfect on this, what you would do is you would put this on the scales and you would weigh the vegetables going in, yeah, 300 to 400 grams, depending on, 300 grams is a lot of vegetables. But for some of us, we might feel we need 400 grams and there's nothing stopping you from adding 400 grams. So I would literally put the bag on the scales and then I would go ahead and I would weigh the vegetables first and then I would weigh the protein to make sure I'm getting an exact measurement, which is going to be not just good for your health goals, but for if you're on a weight loss journey, oh my goodness, this is next level. So let's just say you're doing that. That's probably not quite enough for one, but you could fit 2 portions into this bag. You could fit 2 portions into this bag, which we're going to do. We're going to pretend there's enough for 2 portions. You notice I didn't weigh it, so I'm not entirely sure, but it's a good amount of vegetables. Goes in there. We're going to expel as much of the air as possible. That's just going to help the bag to fit into the freezer if it's not just full and occupied with air. Just burp the bag, lock it in place, and then of course, let's get our little marker, and this, I'm calling this, what is this? This is an anti-inflammatory, and I'll call it an anti-inflam stir fry, and it's vegetarian, as you know, veggie. All right, so there you go. That is my anti-inflam stir fry, ready to go into the freezer. Now, what do you do when it's time to cook? I'll show you guys that in one second, but of course we freeze that down. I'll show you how we actually bring that back to life in a second. The last thing I want to show you guys is another type of stir. There are so many different types of stir fries that we can do. There's so many different types. What vegetables are in season, what vegetables are on hand, and what vegetables your budget is also allowing. So let's just say we're going to be doing a bit of a chicken one. So I'm going to start with cabbage, gorgeous, and I'm going to slice up some cabbage. And yes, cabbage does freeze amazingly well, but one thing you'll notice that I'm doing when it comes to this is I'm doing it in quite almost just a little bit chunkier than coleslaw. Okay, that goes into our bowl. So that's our cabbage done. We're just using the green or the white cabbage. There's nothing stopping us from adding a bit of flavor, and let's add a little bit of red cabbage to that as well. Same type of cuts. That's the key here. You always do the same size cuts because it means you're going to be cooking so much more efficiently. Why not add some onion? I saw the color. I thought onion's going to be wonderful. You make this up, guys. This is what's so beautiful about it. Yes, there's quite a few of my recipes, especially my soups, that you could do in freezer packs and just throw it into kombu stock. You can follow recipes, but at the same time, you can also make this up as you're going along, which is what I love about it. So the other thing I'm going to add here, because they were nice and cheap and lovely, I'm going to add some mushrooms into it. Once again, sliced mushrooms, just a few button, or you could use portobello mushrooms. You could use field mushrooms. I see that a lot of people are actually collecting their own mushrooms at the moment. There seems to be a lot of mushrooms growing around the place. Just make sure if you are collecting your own mushrooms that they are edible mushrooms, because yep, say no more, say no more. Make sure they're edible, please. So we'll add some mushrooms into that, which is gorgeous. What else can we add in? Why not a little bit of sweet potato? That will just kind of top that bowl off just nicely. And once again, eat with your eyes, even if it's just meal prepping. Eat with your eyes. Think about the colors that you're putting into things. It changes significantly how you feel about that food when you're eating with your eyes. So I'm going to just peel my sweet potato. Like I said, if you're low carb, you just avoid this. If you're like me and I'm more maintenance now, as opposed to just wanting to lose a whole heap of weight, I'm still maintaining my 30 kilos weight loss for 2 years now. So for me, I can start to incorporate vegetables that are a little bit higher in carbs, a little bit higher in sugar. And one of the vegetables that I love to add in is sweet potato. I'm still not as keen to add white potato. It's not as nutrient dense as the sweet potato. So if you are starting to incorporate root vegetables back into your diet, I would definitely go for ones that have color, as opposed to our potatoes or our lighter colored sweet potatoes. You can get really quite white ones. Go for the ones with color. They've got just a bit better goodness in them than the ones that are just white colored. So when it comes to sweet potato, you want to cut it really thin. So because you are stir frying, so you want it to be something like that. That's nice and thin. If you struggle with slicing, this is when your mandolin will come in really handy. You guys all know what a mandolin is, right? It's the one where you slice it down and don't slice off your fingers. It's that one. So if you do struggle with slicing, this is an absolutely perfect time to drag out that mandolin and let it slice for you. So we've got those in there. That's kind of it, right? That's gorgeous. Now, you could right now add thinly sliced raw chicken breast to this, 100 grams per person, right? There is nothing stopping you from adding that chicken in there and then mixing it through. But if you've got some other leftover protein that's already cooked, you can also do that as well. Yes, I've got a question from Mahi.
Can you include parsnips?
Can you include parsnips? Parsnips are one you potentially want to avoid. Think about the colour of a parsnip. Parsnips tend to be very, very high in carbs and very high in natural sugars. So I would have parsnips not all the time. This is going to be better for you than a parsnip. Always think, eat the rainbow, eat the rainbow, eat the rainbow. And parsnips, as delicious as they are, and they're fantastic roasted, they're not as great in a stir fry than, say, our sweet potato, which comes up really, really nice. Instead of sweet potato, you could also add a bit of carrot here if you wanted a bit of colour, but slice it really, really thin. And with the carrot, you want to pre-blanch it as well because you want it to cook really fast. So that's our vegetables done. Today, the type of protein that I'm going to be using is just some cooked roast chicken that we had left over. I roasted a chicken. This is our leftover. That's going to go in there. But there is, like I said, there's nothing stopping you from adding raw protein because it's all going to get cooked at the end of the day. So you can absolutely add in your chicken already pre-sliced nice and thin. And then once it's pre-sliced nice and thin, it's completely up to you how you do it. That is your base. That looks like a salad. It's not. It's a stir fry freezer pack. All right, let me clean my hands off. Let's put it into a pouch. Gorgeous little pouches. They are quite fantastic, and they do kind of look pretty cool in your freezer. They look pretty fancy, I have to admit. Look pretty fancy. You don't have to go this fancy, of course. So you're going to, if you want to remember, portion it out. So you're going to do 300 to 400 grams of vegetables and 100 grams of meat. If you're portioning it out 100%, please feel free to do it. You know that you're going to stay on whatever your target is quite nicely if you're doing it that way. So there is our portion ready to go in the freezer. It looks delicious. And when it's time to cook, what are we going to do? Let's do the cooking part. Okay.
Can you grate a carrot into it?
Could you grate carrot into it? Grated carrot's probably too thin. I would say grated carrot is too thin. It will break up and come mushy. So I would avoid grating unless everything is grated. So remember, consistency is a key when it comes to cutting. And I would think that grating a carrot may be a little bit too fine if you were to mix it all together with these vegetables and then try and cook them all together. So I would potentially probably go for the sliced version. Now, can you freeze zucchini or spiraled vegetables? Yes, you can. You can spiralize and then freeze your vegetables as well. But once again, if you're spiralizing, everything needs to be spiralized. So you're spiralizing your zucchini, you're spiralizing your carrot, you're making sure that all the shapes are exactly the same, then it's going to cook evenly. I wouldn't put spiralized zucchini through this because it's completely different, as you know. So you can do spiralized vegetables. I could even add a little bit of eggplant if I wanted to. That's completely up to you. And instead of chicken, of course, I could have turned this into a seafood dish and just added prawns, frozen prawns instead into there. So the options are yours. But how do we go about the cooking process? When you come home and it's late and you're hungry and it's time to eat, you do not want to spend 30 to 40 minutes cooking your dinner. You want to spend 10 minutes of that. So the key here, there's a couple of steps. And I wish I could put this down for you guys so you can remember this. But if you are making freezer packs, maybe you want to grab a pen and paper now because we'll talk through the steps on how to cook it. because you know how to freeze it now. That's done, right? 100 grams of protein, 300 to 400 grams of vegetables, done. Whatever the protein is, whatever the vegetables are. If the vegetables are thick or very firm, we're going to blanch them for 30 seconds to a minute just to cook them through and then cool them under running water. Now when it's time to cook, we're going to take up our trusty wok. Of course, I always have, sitting in my fridge, this is part of my prepping. What do I have? It's only in a jar and I haven't taken the label off. This is my sticky sauce, if you're wondering. I always have sticky sauce. So, the sauce that we're going to use to give our stir-fry flavour, firstly, is going to be our sticky sauce. But if you don't want to use sticky sauce and you want to mix it up a little bit, you know my KFC, my Korean fried chicken? There's nothing stopping you from making a spicy version and adding that sauce, that KFC sauce that I make. I also make a sweet soy. You can make a sweet soy version if you don't want to add sticky sauce. I mean, there are so many different varieties of sauces that you can use to add to this, and you're going to create a completely different flavor and a different complexity to your dish. Imagine this if you would. Why not add some of my roasted tomato sauce to it? Stir fry the vegetables, add some of that sauce to finish with. Amazing, right? So the options are yours. You suddenly have, with these basic ideas, you have hundreds of flavor combinations that you can now create. Hundreds. First with the vegetables and the protein, the next with the type of sauces that you add. It's completely up to you. Depends on what you have in your fridge. I always have sticky sauce, so that's going to be the first thing I add to the base of my bit of steam. Can you see me? Hello, are you there? Alright, the next thing I'm going to add, I hope we don't set off the smoke alarms. We might. This could be fun. The next thing I'm going to add is a little bit of garlic. Here's my garlic. Always in my fridge. Waiting to go, waiting to get cooked. Garlic goes in. Hello ginger. Ginger goes in too. Yum yum. It's already smelling good. It is already smelling delicious. Alright, just grab me a wooden spoon. There we go. Give it a bit of a stir. All we're doing now is just cooking off that ginger and garlic in there. And that bit of sticky sauce. As I was saying, the smell is just improved in this house like you would not believe. It's just absolutely delicious. And once we've given that a quick stir fry, we can start to think about adding our frozen vegetables. Now the trick here is once you've cooked off the whatever sauce it is you're using, and if you've added ginger and garlic or you haven't or whatever, you know, it's up to you. The trick here is not to overfill your pan, because remember you're adding frozen vegetables, so you want to work in batches. So I would literally only do a handful of those frozen vegetables at a time is going to go into there. Remember, that's really important. Do not overfill your frying pan or your wok. Take it really slowly and work in batches. It won't take long for them to defrost and to cook. And if you've got a larger wok, you could add a larger handful. But the trick really is here, guys, is to do things in batches, because if you add that entire pack into your frying pan at once, you won't stir fry, you will stew. And yeah, if you want to make a stew, that's fine, you could totally make a stew. Or if you wanted to add kombu, you could make a soup. But if you're wanting to make a stir fry, it needs to actually have enough heat in there so it's going to fry quite happily. And the way that we do that is by batch cooking. So remember, smaller quantities go in at one time, and you just stand there and you stir, because that's what stir frying is. It's frying and stirring. That's what you're doing. That's all you're doing. You're frying and then you're stirring. You've got garlic, you've got ginger, you've got sticky sauce in there. Take a look. Another thing that we can add, of course, is some seasoning. A little bit of black pepper goes in. A little bit of salt goes in as well. And all you're going to be doing is standing here and stirring and frying for 4 to 5 minutes. That's all it takes. If you find that it's not, you want to add a little bit of liquid to this to make it a little bit moist, little trick for you guys. Your friend kombu, just a little bit of kombu. Not much. Probably like more than 100 mils has gone in there. And I've now created that wonderful, look at that, wonderful gravy down the bottom of our stir fry. And you have cook dinner in 10 minutes, because all you've done is you've heated up the pan, you've added a bit of sticky sauce, you've added some ginger, some garlic, you've taken your freezer pack out of the freezer, and you've started to add your vegetables, and then you've finished it off with that little bit of kombu, which is going to help not just to flavour it, but it's also going to help to increase the iodine level in your food and make it super duper supercharged healthy for you. So that is freezer meals done the right way. Just like that. It's very, very delicious. It is very cool. It is very delicious. And as I was saying, it literally turns meal prepping on its head. Meal prepping used to be a pain in the bum. It doesn't have to be a pain in the bum anymore, because you can do things at your time and you can do things when you need to do them. So enjoy this fabulous style of cooking. Give it a try. Let me know what combinations you come up with your freezer packs, whether they be soup, whether they be stir fries, whether they be packs that are a bit chunky and they can go into stews as well. Think about that. Or they can go into your slow cooker. There are so many things that you can do that is just waiting for you at home. So when you come back from work, or when you're just too tired to actually cut anything and do anything, you are never more than 10 to 15 minutes away from something incredibly delicious and good for your body. So I hope you enjoyed that. I enjoyed that. I actually enjoy this mulch. I can't wait to eat. I'm so hungry. Haven't eaten all day today, so I'm super hungry and super excited that you guys have come and joined me on today's class. Make sure you join me again. We've got another class coming up in a couple of days' time. Thank you guys for joining me. Now, please, wherever you are, just remember to stay safe and stay well, and also just keep calm and keep cooking. All right, guys, good to see you. Cannot wait to see you again. Have a wonderful night tonight, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Take care. Thanks, guys.